Family friend stole $100 in jewelry, gaslit me, and tore my family apart. At my dad's funeral, I exposed her darkest secret. The first time I realized Hannah wasn't who she pretended to be, I was standing in the church hall at my confirmation ceremony, clutching my grandmother's rosary, when I overheard her whispering about selling something before sunrise. At that moment, I didn't know she was talking about the jewelry my grandmother's $100,000 inheritance, but the pit in my stomach told me my life was about to split in two. To understand how I ended up here, you need to know this: Hannah wasn't a stranger. She was a family friend, though that phrase makes me gag now. My mom trusted her like a sister. She was at every birthday party, every barbecue, every late night coffee in our kitchen. She smoked menthols on the porch, leaving the thick cigarette smell on her clothes that always made me wrinkle my nose. She used to ruffle my hair and call me Jackie Boy, and I thought she was just another adult who meant well. But she was studying us, grooming us. That confirmation morning, my hand shook as I held the chalice. I hadn't slept the night before. My depression medication had stopped working weeks earlier, leaving me raw, jittery, and almost hollow inside. Every sound echoed louder, every step felt sharper. I sipped the bitter church coffee at 6 COAM, too strong and scalding, hoping it would keep me awake. It just burned my throat. Hannah was 33 then, and I was only 18, barely legal, barely holding myself together. My cousin Col was there too, standing next to me in a stiff shirt and tie. He leaned in and whispered, "You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I don't know," I muttered. "Something feels off." And I meant it. Something was off. Back when I was 12, I remembered Hannah taking me to a pawn shop once. She said she needed to trade in some old junk. I didn't understand why she made me wait outside with a paper bag full of my toy cars, but I remember her coming out with cash and handing me a soda. "Don't tell your mum," she said, flashing a smile too sweet to be real. At 12, I didn't know it was training teaching me secrets were normal. By 18, the red flags were no longer cute. They were blaring alarms. At my confirmation, while the priest droned on about family, love, and trust, I couldn't stop staring at Hannah in the second row. She sat with her legs crossed, phone hidden in her lap, texting furiously. Every few minutes she'd glance at me, smile, then look back down. At night, after everyone left, I overheard my mom asking, "Hannah, are you sure you don't want to stay for dinner?" Hannah laughed, flicking ash from her cigarette. "No, I've got an early morning, big deal going down before sunrise." I froze in the hallway. Big deal? A phrase stuck in my head like gum on my shoe. It wasn't long before I found out what she meant. Grandma's jewelry rings, necklaces, and that diamond brooch she swore she'd passed down to me was gone. At first, my family thought it was misplaced. She probably put it in a safe box, Carl suggested. But the truth hit weeks later when a jeweler called about an appraisal request. It was Hannah's name on the receipt. When I told my parents, they dismissed me. "Hannah wouldn't do that, Jack. She's like family." My mom's words stung worse than a slap. It was like watching someone side with a stranger over their own son. That's when the first crack split open in my world. I confronted Hannah directly, one humid night in July, standing outside her apartment on 8th Street. She leaned against the doorway, smoke curling from her lips, looking more amused than threatened. "You sold Grandma's jewelry," I accused, my fist trembling. She tilted her head. "Careful, Jackie boy, that's a serious claim." I saw the receipt. Her eyes narrowed. Then she smiled, not kindly, but like a wolf cornering prey. "Receipts can be forged. Besides, even if I did, what are you going to do? No one believes you. Not your mom. Not Carl. Not anyone." She was right. That night, I went home shaking, my chest tight with panic. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. from a nightmare where I was buried alive under piles of jewelry boxes. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. And when I sat up, heart hammering, all I could think about was Hannah's voice. "No one believes you." That was the first red flag I couldn't unsee. After that night outside Hannah's apartment, I started noticing every little detail: the way she kept her phone face down, the sudden silences when I walked into a room, the quick change of subject when I asked about Grandma's things. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. My brain had been rewired after years of manipulation, and even though I hated it, I was hyper-aware of every inconsistency. Carl, my cousin, kept brushing it off. He worked construction, making a steady $3,200 monthly salary, and always said, "Man, stop obsessing. Hannah's weird, but she's harmless." I wanted to believe him. I really did. Well, harmless people don't pawn $100,000 worth of jewelry. Back when I was 12, I used to sleep at Carl's house sometimes because my parents worked nights. I remember waking up to find Hannah in the living room at 2 a.m., chain smoking while whispering on the phone. She was supposed to be babysitting us. Instead, she was pacing, muttering words like transfer and safe house. I didn't understand it then, but looking back now, it was called speak. She was part of something bigger, something darker. "Jack," Carl told me one afternoon while we were grabbing burgers at Miller's Diner, "you've got to let this go. It's eating you alive." I shoved a fry into my mouth, the grease coating my tongue. "She sold Grandma's legacy, man. How can I let it go? It's not about money, it's about respect." Carl sighed. "Look, she's been around since before we were born. She's not some villain in a movie. Maybe Grandma gave it to her. Ever think of that?" That cut me, because it meant Carl didn't believe me either. The next weeks were a spiral. My insomnia got worse. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling before sunrise, shaking as panic attacks rolled over me like waves. Sometimes I'd jolt awake from nightmares where Hannah was standing over my bed, holding my toy cars in one hand and a lighter in the other, smiling as she set them on fire. I'd wake drenched in sweat, convinced she was really there. The cruelest part? My depression medication had stopped working entirely. Therapy sessions became unbearable because all I could do was cry. Here, carrying too much for 18, My therapist told me, you've been conditioned to question your own sanity. That's psychological. Conditioned. That word stuck. Because it was true, I second-guessed everything. I started digging. I found out from a neighbour that Hannah was visiting a storage unit every Tuesday at 9 p.m. I followed her once, heart pounding as I crouched behind my old Civic in the parking lot. She carried boxes inside. Boxes that clinked. I was too scared to confront her, but I knew those were Grandma's things. When I told Carl, he shook his head. Jack, this is obsession. You're not well, man. I wanted to scream. I am not crazy, I saw it. But his face hardened. Drop it, for your own good. That was the first time I felt real betrayal from him. Not just disbelief, but dismissal. Like my pain was inconvenient. Then came the church fundraiser. Hannah waltzed in, all smiles, her perfume heavy enough to mask the cigarette smoke on her clothes. She donated a necklace to the raffle, my grandmother's necklace. I knew it instantly. The sapphire was chipped on the left side. I'd stared at it for years as Grandma rocked me to sleep. I grabbed Carl's arm. That's it, that's hers. Carl pulled away, embarrassed. People were watching. Hannah just smirked at me from across the hall, like daring me to make a scene. And I did. I stormed up to the microphone and shouted, that necklace was stolen from my grandmother. Asps. Whispers. Eyes boring into me. Hannah's voice was calm, syrupy sweet. Oh, Jackie boy, still struggling, huh? I bought this necklace at an estate sale. Everyone knows about your issues. She tapped her temple. Crowd chuckled nervously. Hal yanked me down from the stage. You're making it worse, he hissed. Worse. That word gutted me. The fallout was brutal. Relatives blocked me on all social media platforms. Strangers whispered at church, at the grocery store, even at the diner where I worked part-time. That's the kid who accused Hannah, they'd murmur. I could feel their judgment like daggers in my back. I stopped eating with my family. Meals became silent torture. Every sip of my bitter morning coffee was a reminder that no one believed me. I'd sit there, handshaking, watching Hannah's shadow loom larger and larger in my life, wondering how the hell I could fight someone who had everyone convinced she was an angel. But the truth has a way of clawing itself to the surface. And when it did, it shattered everything. The breaking point came in late October, just before Halloween. The leaves were falling, nights grew colder, and my nightmares got worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Hannah's face morphing into my grandmother's, whispering, "You'll never escape me." I'd wake at 4:12 a.m., shaking so hot my sheets were soaked. My therapist adjusted my dosage, but the depression medication still wasn't working. It was like my brain was fried from too much electricity, sparks short-circuiting every thought. One night, while digging through old boxes in Grandma's attic, I found something, an insurance inventory from 2011, listing every piece of jewelry. Written in her shaky handwriting next to the diamond brooch, for Jack. My name. She had meant for me to have it. Proof. I took the paper straight to the police station, thinking justice was finally possible. But when the officer on duty turned around, my stomach dropped. It was my cousin Michael, the cop in the family. He smiled too wide. Jack, buddy, what's this? I handed him the paper with trembling hands. Hannah stole it. She's selling it off. Look, this proves it. Michael scanned the page, then folded it neatly and slipped it into his desk. I'll look into it. Wait till you make a report, right? Of course. But he didn't. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. When I called to check, he said, we didn't find enough evidence. And then like a gut punch I learned he was close friends with Hannah. They'd been going to the same retreat group for years. That's when it clicked, it wasn't just her. This was bigger. I spiraled. Every corner of my life felt tainted. At school, whispers followed me. That's the kid who made up stories about his family friend. At my job stocking shelves at the grocery store, customers avoided me. One woman muttered, poor boy, doesn't know reality. My boss asked if I needed time off, which was polite code for, you're making customers uncomfortable. Even Carl distanced himself. He stopped answering my texts. When I showed up at his apartment, desperate, he opened the door only a crack. Jack, you've got to stop dragging me into this. People think I'm losing it too. You're my cousin, I begged. She's tearing us apart. His face was pale. Maybe it's you doing that. And then he shut the door. I broke down right there on the stairwell, sobbing until my chest hurt. But then out of nowhere someone came forward. A whistleblower. Her name was Leela, a former church secretary who'd once worked with Hannah. She found me outside after service one Sunday, her voice low and urgent. Jack, I know you're telling the truth. I saw Hannah selling things that weren't hers. She bragged about it, said no one would believe you because of your mental issues. I felt my knees buckle. Finally, someone believed me. Why didn't you say anything before? I asked. Because I was scared, she whispered. They're all connected. The church, the cops, even some of your relatives. It's like a cult. They cover for each other, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Cult. That explained the strange phrases I'd overheard as a kid, the retreats, the secrecy. My life wasn't just collateral damage, it was part of a web. The more I dug, the uglier it got. I discovered Hannah had been funneling money through fake charities, laundering cash through retreats. She wasn't just selling jewelry, she was running a whole operation. And then came the most shocking revelation, records showing Hannah had once filed a death certificate of her own. In 2015, she had faked her death for insurance money. Police were involved. I couldn't believe it. The woman everyone adored, who called me Jackie Boy, had literally staged her own disappearance. That night, I sat on my bed clutching Grandma's old toy box, running my fingers over the little cars I used to play with. My chest ached with betrayal. She hadn't just stolen money, she'd stolen trust, family, reality. She made me question my sanity so deeply that sometimes I wondered if I had dreamed the Dewey, dreamed the receipts, dreamed grandma's promises. But I hadn't. Then came the worst twist of all. Leah told me something that shattered me completely. Hannah had mentored my younger sibling, Nate, for years. She used the same words on him she used on you, Leila whispered. She told him secrets, manipulated him, isolated him. He's still in therapy because of what she did. Hearing that nearly broke me. It wasn't just me she'd hurt. It was Nate, my little brother. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened until I collapsed to the floor. Panic attack. My hands went numb, vision tunneling. All I could think was, she got to him too. She ruined both of us. I knew then, silence wasn't an option anymore. The funeral was for my dad. November 14th, 2021. Cold, grey skies, wet leaves sticking to everyone's shoes. I remember standing at the back of the church hall, clutching the rosary Grandma once gave me, the one thing Hannah hadn't gotten her hands on. My stomach was twisted into knots I hadn't eaten in 2 days, just living off bitter coffee that scraped my throat raw. The whispers started as soon as I walked in. I could hear them, even above the organ. That's the boy who accused Hannah. He's unstable. My face burned. My chest tightened. But I didn't leave. I knew today had to be the day. Hannah sat in the front row, dressed in black, sunglasses perched on her head like some grieving widow. She had the nerve to rest her hand on my mom's shoulder, comforting her, like nothing had happened. My fist clenched. My vision tunneled. When the priest opened the floor for words about my dad, I felt my legs moving before my brain caught up. I stood at the pulpit, staring out to see familiar faces, relatives, neighbours, churchgoers. My hands trembled against the wood. My dad taught me honesty matters more than anything, I began, voice shaking. So I can't stand here and lie, not today, not anymore. The room stiffened. Chairs creaked. I turned my gaze directly to Hannah. She stole from Grandma $100,000 in jewelry. She sold it off piece by piece. She manipulated this family, made me doubt my own mind, made you all doubt me. Asps. A woman dropped her prayer book. My mom's face went pale. Call hissed from the second row. Jack, sit down. But I kept going. She even faked her own death. I've seen the records. She's been running scams for years, and she hurt Nate, my brother. She manipulated him just like she did me. My voice cracked on his name. The crowd erupted. Whispers surged like waves. What? That can't be true. Oh my God. My mom stood abruptly. Jack, stop this right now. I shook my head. Tears burned my eyes. No, Mom, you need to hear this. Dad would want you to know the truth. Hannah stood slowly, removing her sunglasses. Her face was calm, almost amused. You poor boy, she said sweetly, her voice carrying through the hall. You're grieving, you're confused. Everyone knows you've been struggling. She tapped her temple. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I snapped. Don't you dare use my mental health as a weapon. You did this. You stole. You lied. You hurt us. My voice broke into a sob, but it was too late. The dam had burst. Relatives started shouting. One uncle yelled, Is this true? Another muttered, I always wondered about that necklace. Carl stormed up to me, grabbing my arm. Enough, you're humiliating everyone. His grip was tight, fingers digging into my skin. I yanked free. Humiliating, or telling the truth you're too scared to face? That's when Leila the whistleblower stood up from the back. Her voice rang out, steady and clear. He's not lying. I saw her selling things. I saw the records. Hannah bragged about it. The room fell into chaos. Some people shouted at Hannah, others at me. My mom was crying. Carl was shaking his head like the world was crumbling. And Hannah? She just smiled. Smiled like a wolf surrounded by sheep. But the cracks were showing. The service ended in shambles. Instead of quiet condolences, there were arguments spilling into the parking lot. My aunt screamed at Hannah, demanding answers. My uncle accused me of destroying the family. People were crying, yelling, pulling each other apart. I stood in the cold November air, breath clouding, my body trembling with adrenaline. For the first time in years, I didn't feel insane. I felt seen, but the victory was bitter. My mom refused to look at me. Carl called me a disgrace. And Hannah slipped into her black SUV, lighting a cigarette before driving off, smoke trailing like a signature. That night, I collapsed in my room, sobbing into my pillow until I couldn't breathe. My body shook so violently I thought I might break apart. But somewhere in the chaos, I knew I had crossed the line of no return. The truth was out. Fallout, though it nearly destroyed me. After the funeral, my life completely unraveled. The fallout wasn't just whispers anymore, it was exile. My phone lit up for days, not with support, but with venom. Texts from relatives, you ruined your father's funeral, you need help, don't ever contact us again. By the end of that week, every single relative had blocked me on all social media platforms. It wasn't just family. The community turned too. At the grocery store, where I still stocked shelves, people avoided me like I carried a disease. A woman I'd known since childhood shook her head at me and muttered, shameful. My manager pulled me aside. Jack, maybe you should take some time off. Customers are uncomfortable. That was his way of saying, you're a problem now. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes boring into me. Church members crossed the street to avoid me. At the diner, whispers followed. That's him, the boy who accused Hannah. My reputation wasn't just bruised, it was shattered. I withdrew. I'd sit in my room, blinds closed, hunched over the box of Grandma's toy cars I'd kept since childhood, running my thumb over the chipped paint of a red Mustang. Those cars were the last pieces of a time before all this, before my brain became a battlefield. Sleep abandoned me completely. Panic attack set like earthquake, shaking limbs, tunnel vision, chest clamped like a vice. At 3:30 am, one night I collapsed on the bathroom floor, gasping, convinced I was dying. When I finally dragged myself up, I saw my reflection, hollow cheeks, red eyes, a stranger. My depression medication had failed me months ago. My therapist tried adjusting dosages, tried cognitive exercises, but I was slipping through her fingers. Jack, she said one session, her voice soft but firm, you're experiencing complex trauma. You've been gaslit for years, taught to distrust yourself. That kind of psychological rewires how your brain works. It's not your fault. I nodded, but inside I felt broken beyond repair. The lowest point came in December. I tried filing another police report, clutching Grandma's handwritten inventory as evidence. But Michael, the cousin cop, was there again. He pulled me into his office, shut the door, and whispered, "You need to stop. You're embarrassing the family. You're embarrassing me." I felt rage bubble in my chest. You're supposed to protect people, not bury their reports. His expression hardened. Walk away, Jack, or I'll make sure you regret it. I left shaking, tears streaming down my face. That night I punched a hole in my bedroom wall. My knuckles bled. I didn't even care. Christmas was brutal. I wasn't invited to family gatherings. Photos popped up online, Hannah in the middle, smiling with my cousins like nothing had ever happened. My mom looked fragile beside her, clinging to Hannah's arm as if she were the only stability left. Seeing those pictures felt like swallowing glass. I drank too much cheap whiskey alone on Christmas Eve, the taste burning worse than the bitter morning coffee I'd lived on for weeks. At midnight, I opened the box of toy cars again, lined them up across the floor, and cried so hard I thought I'd choke. I couldn't see a future. All I could see was Hannah's smirk, her cigarette smoke curling in the air, her voice echoing, "No one believes you." That somewhere in that darkness, therapy began to shift. My therapist pushed me to write down every nightmare, every panic episode, every betrayal. Externalize it, she said. Give it shape so it doesn't control you. So I wrote. Pages and pages. About Hannah selling the jewelry. About the cult-like secrecy. About Carl slamming the door in my face. About Michael threatening me. About Dad's funeral. About Nate, my little brother, trapped in her manipulation. For the first time, the weight inside my chest felt like it had somewhere to go. And then, in January, I got a call from Leela the whistleblower. I'm ready to go public, she said. You're not alone in this fight. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Small, fragile, but real. But recovery wasn't instant. I still woke before sunrise, gasping from nightmares. I still shook when I passed Hannah's car in town. I still felt the urge to smash my phone every time I saw a relative post about family unity with a grinning in the background. Rock bottom wasn't just one night, it was a season. A season of silence, isolation, and raw survival. But in that wreckage, something was growing. A will to fight. Recovery didn't look like what I thought it would. It wasn't some big, cinematic breakthrough. It started slow, painfully slow. Small steps that felt pointless at first. My therapist told me, Jack, you've been living in survival mode for years. Healing will feel unnatural at first. She was right. At first, it was just routines. Making my bed. Drinking one glass of water before coffee, even though the coffee still tasted bitter and acidic on my tongue. Going for short walks before sunrise, when the streets were empty, so I didn't have to face the whispers or stares. I kept writing too. Journals filled with every memory of Hannah, every betrayal, every nightmare. My therapist said it was about reclaiming my story. For so long, Hannah's voice had been louder than mine. Now I was finally putting my own words down. Some nights I still woke up drenched in sweat, gasping from panic attacks, but I started practicing breathing exercises instead of punching walls. The first real shift came in February. Leila followed through on her promise. She brought evidence documents, recordings, testimonies from others Hannah had manipulated. She stood beside me when I tried again to bring it forward. This time, it couldn't be buried. It wasn't just me against Hannah anymore. It was me and Leila against the cult of silence. When word spread, something unexpected happened. Strangers reached out. People I barely knew messaged me, I believe you. She did the same to my aunt. You're not crazy, you're brave. For the first time in years, I felt the ice around my chest thaw, just a little. Trust was still hard. Paul hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. My mom kept Hannah close, refusing to see what was right in front of her. The family I thought would always be my anchor had chosen the manipulator over me. That scar will probably never fade. But I started to learn that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you're at your lowest. One of those people was Emily. We met at a therapy group for trauma survivors. She was sitting across the circle, nervously twisting a bracelet on her wrist as she shared about her own past. There was something in her eyes, raw pain, but also strength. After the session, she walked up to me and said, "Your story, it made me feel less alone." I didn't know then, but that was the start of something real. At first, I was terrified to let her in. I had trust issues so deep they felt carved into my bones. Every time she texted me, my brain screamed, "She'll betray you." Just like the others. But she didn't. She stayed. Patient. Gentle. We'd sit in her apartment drinking tea, not coffee. I couldn't stand the bitterness anymore. I'd tell her about Grandma's toy cars I used to line them up in perfect rows, needing order when everything else was chaos. One night she surprised me with a little die-cast Mustang, the same model as my childhood favourite. "So you remember the good parts too," she said softly. I broke down crying, right there on her couch. Not from pain, but from relief. Someone saw me not as broken, not as a liar, not as the boy who accused Hannah. Just me. Chuck. By spring, things slowly shifted. The investigation into Hannah gained traction thanks to Leila's evidence. My cousin Michael, the cop, was quietly reassigned after internal complaints surfaced. It turned out he buried more than just my reports. The cult-like network Hannah was tied to started fracturing under scrutiny. And me? I wasn't fixed. Trauma doesn't vanish. I still had nightmares. Crowd still made my skin crawl. I still startled when I smelled cigarette smoke on someone's clothes. But I wasn't drowning anymore. I kept going to therapy. I started exercising, lifting weights at the cheap gym downtown, channeling rage into movement instead of self-destruction. I enrolled in community college classes, something I thought I'd never be stable enough to do. Slowly, brick by brick, I rebuilt a version of myself that wasn't defined by Hannah. Now, at 18 turning 19, I can say this: I learned to trust again. I learned love doesn't have to hurt. Emily showed me that. My therapist guided me there. Layla proved I wasn't crazy. Hannah may have stolen jewelry, money, trust, years of peace. She may have manipulated my family into choosing her over me. But she didn't win. Because today, when I wake before sunrise, I don't just see shadows. I see possibility. I make my bed. I drink my water. I line up my toy cars on the shelf not as a crutch, but as a reminder that even after everything, I'm still me. And most importantly, I'm no longer alone.